Well, this afternoon, the Missouri Supreme Court ruled that Amendment 3 will remain on the state's November 5th ballot. Now, the decision came after oral arguments this morning where the attorney for pro-life plaintiffs argued that the initiative petition misled voters by not including all the laws that Amendment 3 would effectively repeal. Now, if passed, this ballot measure will not only constitutionalize abortion until birth, it will also sever, from basically reading it, parental rights over sexual issues, including gender transition surgeries for minors, and could even deal with issues such as sex education in the schools. So how should pro-life and pro-family Missouri voters respond? Well, returning today to discuss this is Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. General Bailey, thanks so much for joining us again here on Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me on, Tony.
All right, let me get your reaction to today's decision from the Missouri Supreme Court.
It's a sad day in the history of the state of Missouri. I vehemently disagree with the decision. I think that at the end of the day, there are statutory and legal requirements that these sorts of ballot initiatives put voters on notice about some of the policy positions that the initiative petitions take. And that is required to enumerate the laws that will be repealed or nullified by enactment of this constitutional amendment. The proponents of this dangerous amendment have not so notified the voters. They failed to identify a single statute that the amendment repeals. So again, the Missouri voters are being sold a bill of goods, and the Supreme Court has now rubber stamped that going forward. It's in the hands of the voters at this point. And my prayer is that Missouri voters will wake up and go to the polls in November and realize that this is wrong for the people of the state of Missouri and is dangerous to the health and safety of children and of women.
Once the voters act on this, when we see that there were laws that are affected by this that were not enumerated in the amendment, does that open it up again to legal challenge?
It does, but at this point, whether or not that issue can interfere with enactment of the constitutional amendment has been adjudicated by the court. And that what's disappointing is that the court issued a one-page decision saying by majority vote and that opinions will be forthcoming. Now, the silver lining there is that that would seem to infer that there were at least some dissents. And so there may be a fount of legal authority upon which to act going forward based on what those dissents provide. We haven't seen them yet because the court hasn't published those yet. But I think what's especially frightening here is that the way in which the court interprets initiative petitions that are adopted on the ballot by the people, the jurisprudence in the state of Missouri, the case law says that the Supreme Court is to give those broader interpretation than statutes enacted by our General Assembly. So in other words, all the harms that you enumerated and listed based on your plain reading of the constitutional amendment will absolutely come true. And the harms could be broader based on judicial interpretation post-enactment.
I want to read part of the language again, just for the benefit of our viewers and our listeners, because we've got a lot of folks in the state of Missouri, and they're going to need to take action based upon this. But this is amending the Missouri Constitution to provide the right for reproductive freedom, which is defined as the right to make and carry out decisions about all matters relating to reproductive health care, including but not limited to prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, birth control, abortion care, miscarriage care, and respectful birthing conditions, end quote. I mean, that's wide open, including but not limited to. This could include any number of things, and the voters of Missouri are not going to have the benefit of knowing what those are.
That's exactly right. And again, that's why there's supposed to be safeguards in place that force the proponents of this sort of dangerous amendment to identify all of the policy positions encapsulated in the amendment and all of the statutes that will be repealed. And their failure to do so deprives the Missouri voting public of knowledge that they need to have going into the polling place. So if you don't know, vote no. Right. That's the only answer to this question. Even if you disagree with me, I'm adamantly pro-life. Every life has value, and we've got to protect life. But even if you disagree with me, surely we can all get behind the principle that the voting public should have all the information before rendering a decision, and we don't have that when it comes to this amendment.
One question, we discussed this yesterday, but I want to be very clear for the benefit of our listeners and viewers in Missouri. And by the way, folks, there's 9 other states that have pro-abortion initiatives that have been put on the ballot post-Roe that need to be voted down. And so we're going to be talking about those over the next several weeks. But this one in Missouri in particular is probably one of the most far-reaching of the 10. General Bailey, Is it your reading and understanding that based upon this definition of reproductive freedom, that we could see a severing of parental rights to protect minors from the radical transgender experimentation of drugs and mutilating surgeries.
That's absolutely right. And that's another legal flaw within the four corners of this proposed amendment, that it encapsulates more than one subject. It goes far beyond abortion and termination of innocent life. It also goes to the mutilation of children and will remove any government safeguards that protect kids and protect a parent's right to know what's going on in that kid's life as that child may be experiencing gender dysphoria and succumb to impulses to undergo these types of procedures. It will absolutely open the door to that parade of horribles that the state of Missouri experienced prior to passage of Senate Bill 49, which proscribed gender mutilation of children.
So just to be clear again, General, so if you support life, if you do not want to see a severance of parental rights, if you do not want to see the mutilation of children, if you do not want to see radical sex education forced upon our kids in the schools without the parents having a voice, then you got to vote no on this.
Vote no on Amendment 3. The radical progressives that are pushing this amendment, and I believe have broken the law, attempt to turn Missouri into California, and Missourians do not want to be like the state of California. If you don't understand the amendment, if you haven't had time to read it, even if you agree with parts of it, but you haven't had the full understanding of it, vote no on Amendment 3.
This is a Trojan horse. This is not a constitutional amendment. Attorney General Andrew Bailey, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time out of what I know has been a very busy day to join us.
Thank you, Tony.